Hi everyone, I hope you're keeping well and welcome to this live stream. I haven't made any content for a little while. Things have been extremely busy, but things have opened up a little bit more lately, which is something I'll talk about. And that means I do have more time to just sit and stream. And I think I'm going to embrace live streaming a lot more because there's something kind of refreshing and freeing about just sitting down and speaking. So for this episode of the podcast, which I'm kind of lumping this with the podcast because it covers existentially terrifying and delightful concepts, I will be talking about three general topics. First, I just want to talk a little bit about Three Body Problem and the recent series that is released on Netflix, and also the books, which I've read the first one of, and I'll talk more about that just now. And then I'd like to talk a little bit about why I think that Rocket League actually needs to experience a PAL world, which, if none of what I just said makes any sense to you, then that's fine. Because that relates to my third point, which is the problem of specificity, which is something I'll get into more detail. I'll get into more detail about it a little bit later, but for now I can just say that whenever you create hyper-specific content, that content is obviously not going to appeal to everybody. So the nice thing about this stream is that I can talk about these hyper-specific points, like why I think Rocket League needs another PAL world, and I can just release that as a specific clip later on, so people who are really interested in that can watch it. And so I can sort of pull from the stream and just get all of my ideas out at once in this way. So, I want to begin just by talking about Three Body Problem. I'm not going to give any major spoilers here, but I will spoil a few elements of the story if you haven't seen it or you haven't read it. But I should first of all say, what is Three Body Problem? I'm going to butcher the pronunciation, but I believe it's Cixin Liu, or Liu Cixin, however you want to arrange the name and surname. Chinese author who wrote a series of books, a trilogy of books, which is generally referred to as the Three Body Problem series. Actually, sort of, the actual name of the series has just escaped me. It'll probably come back to me. But nevertheless, the first book in the series is called The Three Body Problem. I actually have my copy here. And I found out about this book through a great YouTube channel that you might be familiar with, which is Quinn's Ideas. And he has a video which is very highly viewed. It's something like the most terrifying science fiction series, and I had to watch that. And then he talks about Three Body Problem, but it's not terrifying in the way that you might expect from sort of sci-fi horror, right? I tend to think of movies like Alien when I think of sci-fi horror. This is a different kind of terrifying. It's more existentially terrifying, which is what I kind of want to explore here. So I found out about the book thanks to Quinn's Ideas, the channel, and then I found out not long after that they were actually turning this into a series. So Netflix was going to make a show, and it was going to be based on the books. And in contrast to, it's being created by the same guys who created Game of Thrones. In contrast to Game of Thrones, they actually have the complete book series already, whereas with Game of Thrones, they didn't have the ending, and we all saw how that turned out, right? So I was a little bit more hopeful, but I said to myself, okay, if it's going to come out on Netflix, I want to get and read at least the first book, because I'm assuming that the first season would probably be based on the first book, not knowing anything about the book at this point, not having read it. And I would say I'm mostly correct. There are some ideas from the second book that aren't in the first book that you do hear about in the series, like wall faces. But overall, I thought it was amazing. I thought it was a really good season. I thought that the show started off really strong. And I actually think it was surprisingly... not even surprising, but it was just really well done how they managed to take a lot of the complicated, kind of lofty ideas, scientific ideas that you find in the book, and present that to the average viewer in a way that's still sort of comprehensible without ever losing that weirdness, because it is really weird. I mean, I was so happy when I saw that the Trisolarians, or the Santi in the show, I'm so happy that they dehydrate. It seems like such a weird thing, but I was really happy to see that. I'm really happy to see that they actually created the human calculator with the armies of people lifting up the flags. All of those little things that you read and you think, how on earth would they ever actually show this in a show? And they managed to do it. And they did it well. So I really thought that the series was good, just on a starting point here. Like, I really enjoyed the series, and I hope that the following seasons can sort of continue that trend and gives me time to read. I think it's The Dark Forest, and then I believe it's At Death's End. So, yeah, that's the first point. And then I want to just say that, I want to explore a little bit, why is this show so terrifying? Why is the idea so terrifying? And it is really, in a way, I want to be careful what I say, but it feels like real science fiction, in the sense that it's planet Earth today. It's a situation that we could easily imagine ourselves in, even though it seems at the same time so far-fetched, the way it all plays out. But effectively, there's, at the core of the idea, there is a deep existential dread. And this is the horror element that I experienced when I was reading it. This idea that we're not alone is so played out in so many ways, in so many movies. It's something we hear so often, that it was surprising to me that a show could come along with, or I should say a book can come along with, essentially this premise that we're not alone, but really explaining and expanding upon what the repercussions of that would be for us as humans. What that would really mean existentially to life on Earth, for the generations that are coming after us, for the meaning we assign to those generations, knowing that they are going to encounter something that is coming to Earth in several hundred years. And I think before I go on, I should probably just explain a few basic points. So this is a minor spoiler, but there are aliens involved, but it's not, the kind of alien movie or series you would expect. Basically, humanity, and I'm going to be vague here, but humanity reaches out by sending a signal into outer space, but it manages to amplify that signal. I'm being deliberately vague here. And we get a response, but the response is not what you would expect. And when I read the book, it wasn't at all what I expected from this kind of genre. And essentially, we make contact, but we make contact with a pacifist who doesn't want war. And their response to our message is, do not reply. Do not reply. Please don't reply to this message, because I'm a pacifist from this other world, and if you reply, we will come and we will conquer you, and we will win. And as this unfolds, up to the point where we're actually, as humanity, being actively demotivated, to the point where our whole progress as a civilization is halted, so that we cannot advance. Through all of that, you cannot help but imagine what that situation would be like. And the result is a sort of immense worry and fear at an enemy that's greater, more advanced, more intelligent, that can see and hear everything we are doing, that is coming for us, and is not even going to hit us, but is going to hit our generations when they eventually arrive. And the tension between finding out about them and them arriving is really where the magic happens, and the ways that humanity has to strategize to try and overcome this. It's fantastic. It is built on this idea of, if you have three bodies in space, it's pretty much, and I'm speaking now as very much as a layman, but it's pretty much unpredictable how these bodies in space are going to be moving. It's not as predictable as, let's say, two bodies, and I say it's not as predictable, but it's just pretty much the problem that the book expounds and tries to solve. And effectively, you are learning really interesting scientific concepts. You're seeing really interesting scientific concepts play out in this sort of horror situation, existentially horror-filled situation. And it really opens your mind. It really opened my mind to, I would say, the world of science and understanding these concepts a little bit deeper, going and doing a little bit of research. I mean, it's one of the first books I've ever read where I actually wanted to put the book down to go and Google some idea or concept, not because the book did a bad job of explaining it, but because I was so curious I wanted to learn more about it. And I think it's Lovecraftian in the way it creates this sense of cosmic horror and cosmic dread. And this is something I felt very tangibly as I was reading it, is I haven't really seen this kind of bridge between this Lovecraftian sense of cosmic dread and pure analytical science, right? That that bridge was really well drawn in this book. Another thing I really loved about the book is that it was originally written in Chinese and then translated and then obviously won the Hugo Award, which is a pretty big deal. So for me, when I'm reading it, I'm not Chinese. I'm not thinking in the same grammatical structures as somebody who is Chinese and who's writing in Chinese. So when you read it, you often come across these really beautiful metaphors that I just don't think I would have thought of necessarily being an English speaker and an Afrikaans speaker. So let me give you some examples, right? So somewhere early on in the book, the author talks about a police detective, or detective is the right word. So a detective who can sort of feel the presence of the bombs in the building. And then he uses the metaphor of a magnet that can sort of feel the pull of the iron close by to it, right? And that's a really interesting metaphor that I've never heard or never read in English literature. Then he also talks about this great line where he says, one of the characters says, "I'm a really straightforward person. If you look in my mouth, you can see out of my asshole." I mean, that's such a one of the lines of all time, right? It's just I would never have thought about it in that way. Now, maybe I'm reading into it. Maybe as an English speaker, somebody might have thought of that. But it just seemed to continually strike me that, yes, I am reading a translation, but that actually adds to the experience because it's so foreign in a wonderful way. So, Three-Body Problem, highly recommended. Fantastic book. And I think the series is good too, and I think it's worth watching. I think it's worth your time, and I really hope that it's renewed for a second season. I think it will be. Then I wanted to talk a little bit about Rocket League and Power World. And this is such a transition. It's a totally different topic. But if you've at all seen my channel, you know that I have a kind of continual struggle with niche. And I think before I jump into Rocket League and Power World, let me just say that I have just way too many interests to create a single niche, a single topic that I want to explore. So one week I might be interested in Three-Body Problem, and a few weeks later I might be interested in something completely different. It might be something happening in video game culture. It might be something happening on a religious level with the Catholic Church, which is something I'm going to talk about later this week. There's too many interests for me to make my channel a niche channel. And the problem with this is that I end up talking about lots of different hyper-specific things, like who took the folder in this one scene in one movie, and why this specific song on this specific album has mythological themes that I think you should be interested in. And I like that, and that's what I enjoy doing, but the problem is that I end up with an audience where some people are here for religious content, and some people are here for me to talk about books, and some people are here for something else, and I am just not going to be able to cater to everything in every video because that's just not what I'm interested in at the moment. So I thought, and by the way, this is the problem of specificity, because I'm I'm sort of specializing in many little things. I don't have a general appeal. And so I think there might be people like you, God bless you, who might just enjoy kind of anything I talk about, because maybe you just want to hear somebody else's perspective on things, which I think is nice, and I can relate to that. But what I'm going to do now is, in these streams, I'm just going to jump from topic to topic that I'm interested in, and then afterwards I'll just clip the stream. So the people who just want to hear about Power World and Rocket League can watch that video, and they don't have to watch the full stream. And if they're really interested in the other topics, they can. This is just an easy way for me to make content, given that I work a full-time job, and I'm a dad, and I'm a husband, and I'm studying my final year of a bachelor's degree, and I have a full-time job, and I have a business on the side, and all this other stuff. I just don't have the luxury to sit down and create a well edited video essay. I could, but it's going to take, I'm going to get one video every 6 months, right? And I want to talk about things. I actually talk for a living, so I really enjoy just doing this with you guys. Cool. So that's the problem with specificity, and that's why I'm segueing from three-body problem, existential dread, aliens invading Earth, sci-fi, to Rocket League and Power World. So you might not know, but not long ago, a video game released called Power World, which caused a lot of controversy because it seemed to many people to be a sort of rip-off of Pokemon. And there was a lot of questions about, is there going to be legal action from Nintendo, or rather the Pokemon company, towards Power World, because the company's very, I think the word is litigious, and they don't really tolerate people using their properties. And essentially, Power World didn't really copy them directly. So to my understanding and to my knowledge, there isn't really a case there. And again, to my knowledge, I haven't seen anything unfold. Anyway, the reason Power World is relevant is Power World gave people a Pokemon game that they've always wanted, but that the Pokemon company, Game Freak, Nintendo, just never created. And it's more than a Pokemon game. I mean, there's so many different systems and mechanics, but it has this element of capturing pals with pal balls, right? It's like Pokeballs, capturing Pokemon. And so it really does scratch that itch for a lot of people that people have had for many, many years. And so obviously people began drawing comparisons between Power World and Pokemon. And I thought this whole thing was very interesting because it seems like you now have a small studio, a small team of people that create a game that sells, by the way, I mean sells millions. And then you have this big studio that has way more resources but just doesn't give people what they actually want, that isn't really catering to the market, or doesn't understand the market, or is not interested in operating in that part of the market. And so what this does is it sort of created this new dynamic where small indie companies can come in and create essentially a similar game, but make it better and give people what they actually want, to the point where perhaps millions of people will buy that game, thus boosting that company and allowing that company to create more games like that, and keep the player at the end of the screen happy and enjoying themselves. And so why do I relate this to Rocket League? Well, I've been thinking for a while now, Rocket League probably needs something like a Power World, because the game seems to be stagnating. And this is not just my opinion. The biggest Rocket League YouTuber, who's a Musty, or just Musty, but a Musty Cow is his YouTube name, on YouTube is his name, and even he, who's the biggest YouTuber covering Rocket League, I mean, he recently released a video saying, dear Rocket League, this game is it's just the same old. There's nothing new. There's, we have all these things we want. We have all these ideas, but there's just this lack of communication. The game is not expanding. You're not actually listening to the people. And yes, the game is still fun. The game is wonderfully fun. The game is great, but too much of a good thing. familiarity breeds contempt. Over time, people are going to lose interest, and the worry is that the company behind this, the studio behind this, is just not thinking in the same long-term vein as the players are, and as a consequence, players would probably, and this is what I think if a smaller indie studio pulled a Pal World and created a similar Rocket League, but actually included the innovation and the change of gameplay styles and more detailed car customization, because Rocket League is about cars driving around, and essentially car soccer is one way you could think about it. Cars driving around trying to get big giant balls into goals. They could do all of that, all of those things that Rocket League players are asking for, and if they managed to do it better than Rocket League, it would essentially be another Pal World. And I don't really see people talking about the fact that Pal World has kind of opened that as a possibility, where smaller gaming studios can come in, create a better version of the game, and actually pull a huge audience. Now, I think this is a good thing, because I think it then forces Psyonix, the company behind Rocket League, to reevaluate, oh my goodness, we've just lost such a massive player base to this new game. I think it kind of puts them in a position where they have to consider updating or adapting or innovating. And this comes back to a basic principle, which is that competition is essentially good, because competition keeps you healthy. It keeps the company on its toes. So, in my country, if you want a specific legal document or an ID document, you have to go to the government, essentially the government home affairs, to get the documentation you need. There's no other way for you really to get this documentation. So there's no competition for that government building. There's no private competition to that government company. And what that means is that company, Home Affairs, can kind of treat people as badly as they want. They can delay things. You have no other option. But if a private company opened and offered that same, offered a better experience, offered quicker speeds, offered more organization, everybody would use that new service. And it would force the original business to reconsider its attitude, its aptitude, its competence, its abilities, the way it's offering that service, the way it treats its customers. Everything improves as a consequence of that healthy competition. And I'm hoping that's going to happen with the Pokemon games. I'm hoping that's going to happen with Rocket League at some point. But this is why I say, and I feel on some level, Rocket League probably needs a Pal World. Rocket League probably needs something like a Pal World indie game company to come in, or just an indie game company to come in and do it better. And then we simply see what the market wants, what the players want, what we buy, what we play, how many hours we sink into these games. And that, I think in the end, will result in a better game, a better Rocket League. So, that's pretty much it for tonight, guys. I've pretty much covered everything I wanted to cover. I thought this was going to be a much longer episode. But, yeah, there's not much more for me to say tonight. I see that the Vatican has just released a new document, so I'll be probably talking about that in this week. Curious to see what that is about. And yeah, there's a few other interesting topics I'm going to talk about coming up soon. Thank you very much for being here. I recently started a consulting firm, and it's been doing pretty well. Firm is a very grandiose word. I'm sort of freelancing at the moment, but I'm doing voice work here locally, and I've worked with a few companies already, and it's been very exciting. So if you are curious about vocal work or voice work or any kind of vocal recordings, I'll actually start sharing that in the description, because it is just something I'm doing for myself and to sort of generate some income for my family. And so I don't see a reason to be, I just feel I should just be transparent and tell you that I'm doing this business, and I'll probably just share it on YouTube. So basically every video is going to be sponsored by by my company that is just me currently, actually. Just something on the side. But yeah, I'll share more about that in a future episode. I didn't really map out a breakdown for that in this live stream. But anyway, I love this format of just speaking to you guys, not being too scripted. I hope I could get you guys thinking, or at least that these super niche topics are at least relevant or interesting to some of you. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Dylan, and this has been Existential Delight number 20. I will see you guys in the next video. Please like, please subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.